really happy that we have this opportunity to do these Zoom meetings. And so I took advantage of that and updated this presentation. I know it's long overdue. It's almost 2 years old now, but we always tried to make a special arrangements to have this presentation done properly, but it was always like we just couldn't find the time to do it sometimes, and due to travel arrangements and everything else. So anyway, let me just get going here. So because it's a lot, I got a lot of slides, but I'm going to go through quite quickly because I realize that the meeting's gone long enough as it is.
Alan, don't worry about the time at all, brother. Just whatever you take time. I've got this till 10:30, so that'll be a 3-hour meeting. So we won't go that long.
Well, what I'm emphasizing though, I've done a lot of work on this presentation, and a lot of it's actually documented within the presentation. So this presentation can be retransferred to anybody, rather than me just ramble on about stuff. There's a lot of stuff in here that people can just read about as well, rather than me talk about it. So I'll go through it quickly, but like I said, I'll do it as best I can. So let's get started here. So it started 3 years ago when I was given the opportunity of a lifetime that amateur astronomers can only dream of. It was at actually one of those the annual Christmas parties that Peter and his family puts on for us in his home. And at that point, where Rudy Dorner approached me about how would you like to observe through the Lowell Observatory's Clark refractor. You can just imagine what I would like. I can't remember exactly what I responded to him, but it was something to do with the fact that I love to, but how would this even be possible, right? Like being registered as a national historical landmark and such is not available for private bookings. But I know Rudy, with his negotiating skills, managed to convince the directors of our serious intentions of booking the telescope as amateur astronomers, and taking advantage of a loophole in their observatory's mission statement, right? So the arrangements were made. He made the arrangements made a year in advance for the three of us, including Peter, to have 4 hours of telescope time allocated for us from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. July 23rd, 2018, to observe any object we desired. This was unprecedented arrangements that were made, according to the 2 telescope operators that were working with us at the time. They never saw this ever. Okay, this was something special that Rudy did for us. Now, unfortunately, Rudy encountered a shoulder injury 1 week prior to our trip and couldn't join us as a result. And so in his place, Rudy recommended stargazer Steve to join us, as you will come to realize why. So here's our story. Okay, so as we realized, we have to get down there, right? So like we had to travel down to the Detroit airport and with our luggage and everything else, but we brought some interesting things, right? For example, in this case here that Peter brought, he's bringing something special, but we don't know what it is. And he hopes that he can get it across the border, right? So far so good. We managed to get through airport customs and so on. We had to sleep in a car overnight just to get ready to book our flight at the airport the next morning. So we welcome to Flagstaff. So whenever you take an opportunity to go to Lowell Observatory, you need to visit all of the sites along the trip and everything else. There's so much to see, right? So when we arrived, here's our home that was arranged for us, a beautiful cabin resort, and unfortunately we had to rent a what Peter calls a Flint snowmobile, because it basically traveled like that. It basically felt like we were traveling in a Flint snowmobile because it just it felt like we were traveling on concrete tires. But that's another story. So here's a close-up of our resort. And inside, we had contact information, we had internet connection and everything else, heating, flooring and air conditioning, everything else. It's just a luxurious suite, and impeccable, with a library and beautiful furniture and accommodations, kitchen, everything, full facilities of all kinds. And here we go, toast to Rudy, wish you were here. we always kept Rudy in our minds whenever we experienced everything that we did back then during that trip. And so what was in that case? Well, here we go. It was Peter's briefcase telescope, the 8-inch F6, I believe, that we managed to bring across the border, and we set it up one of the nights that we were there. We're down there for almost four or five nights, and we actually took it out and observed through it. We looked at Saturn and Mars and everything, and it was great. It was a great experience. We actually had some neighbors that were walking down the street during the evening, and they got to look through the telescope as well. And we got some great images, including, I don't know if this neighbor was one of them, but he had some interesting paraphernalia on his card. He was actually barbecuing some steaks or whatever it was on his barbecue on the front hood of his car. And he had a lot of propaganda associated with his vehicle as well as whatever. So anyway, we managed to looking around for a restaurant to go visit, and looked like we found one, the El Capitan. Looked like to be a beautiful place. The food was just incredible, and the service, everything else. It was just remarkable. This is where it got really interesting, because we got to meet some of the folks of the town, of Flagstaff, for the first time, meaning the waitresses, the people that were eating there, the owners of the establishment. And what was really unique is that everybody that lives in Flagstaff, ever since they were in kindergarten, they all knew about the Lowell Observatory. They would go there as kids. They would learn all about astronomy. It was all part of their curriculum. And everybody in that town knows something about astronomy, right? Because they grew up with it. It was entrenched in their souls as soon as they were kids. Everybody went to the Lowell Observatory, and when we were there, like as we're going up the hill, there's lookouts, and you can see a bunch of teenagers hanging out there, just partying up, tailgate parties and everything else near the hill. And people actually hang out, teenagers and everybody else hang out at on Mars Hill, overlooking Flagstaff. So it was really interesting to hear the stories of the patrons at the restaurant and the waitresses, and they all remember going to the observatory as kids, even since kindergarten. So that was remarkable to hear about. So of course we always take some photo opportunities, right? So the three amigos here and everything else. And anyway, like I said, I could share this presentation. There's so much detail here. We can go forever on here, but we're on our tour here. So Meteor Crater is another place that you need to visit. You go to visit Arizona or the Lowell Observatory. Meteor Crater has a lot of significance, as you'll see. First off is how to get there. So just driving down the road from our residence, we come across an intersection, and these are our options. Okay, where do we go from here? Peter's driving. I'm trying to be the navigator, and so is Steve, and we're kind of confused here. So anyway, we managed. Okay, but it was fun. So Meteor Crater. Okay, get ready for the impact. Experience the impact. Be aware that the speed limit for motor vehicles is 50 miles per hour, but meteors, you're okay with 26,000 miles per hour, so you're okay there. So I don't know if a lot of you know about the Meteor Crater. It's quite a thing. Big tourist attraction in Arizona. It's the largest. This is a piece of the largest fragment of the 150-foot meteor that created the crater. This is the largest fragment that was discovered. So you can see the huge impact of this crater. It's 1.2 kilometers wide. Okay. You can see just give an impression here of the size of it compared to the people on the observing platforms there. These are different perspective views that we took. go through them quickly here. These are some panoramic shots that we took. These are geological formation here. So you can see the size of this thing, including the depth, pretty deep, and everything else. And this is interesting. We saw this. This was part of in the museum at the site. Now, just give you an idea. That the smallest object, right, that you can see on the moon, with the largest telescopes, or one of the best telescopes on Earth, is between 1 and 2 kilometers in diameter. Okay, so this gives you an idea. This is how big the Arizona crater would appear on the moon if you were able to see it. We look at craters on the moon. We look at the smallest features on the moon, and we always imagine how big are those smallest, tiniest features that we see. Well, it just gives you an idea of the smallest little feature that you see on the moon is actually the size of that Arizona crater. I find that just mind-boggling. Like just to see this, like that's how big the Arizona crater would appear on the moon at this resolution of a picture. And we've all seen pictures of the moon like this, right? So I found that pretty mind-boggling. Oh yeah, the Grand Canyon, we can't miss that, right? So I'm going to go very quickly through this, these slides, and it's just mind-boggling, the scenery here and everything. It was just an incredible experience for all of us, and some crazy people doing like selfies on the edge of the cliffs, and apparently, like I forget the number, but many people die at the Grand Canyon every year by doing crazy stunts like that. Right, doing selfies and stupid things like that, and just goes to show that we got to be careful, right? Here's Stargazer Steve. Yours truly. I wish Sheldon was here. You'd be able to explain all of the sediment periods here of the Grand Canyon. Montezuma Castle. So that was an interesting visit that we did as well along our way. So this castle is built into solid limestone with consisting of 20 rooms, 5-story high, dwelling 70 feet above the ground. It was thought to be made by the Aztecs, but apparently it was made by some Minions between the 12th and 14th centuries. And anyway, they tried to. It became a national monument in 1906. And our way to Sedona here, more pictures, more beautiful sceneries here. Like I said, I'm going through this stuff quickly here, and we'll get to the. Now we're at the Lowell Observatory. Here we go, guys. So Lowell Observatory. It's got quite a history, as you know. I won't get into it too much, but Percival Lowell was a Bostonian mathematician, very wealthy. Right, and it was infatuated with Mars, right? He thought that Mars had life on it, and so he procured in 1894 to build an observatory and have the Clark brothers build a 24-inch refractor at a cost of $20,000. And the observatory became very known to many discoveries, including the first detection of the expanding nature of the universe, discovery of Pluto, moon mapping the Apollo program, as well as discovering the rings around Uranus and atmosphere around Pluto and many other things. And in 2011, Time magazine actually named the Lowell Observatory as one of the world's 100 top most important places to visit. here's the observatory up on the hill. And I'll tell you one thing, Flagstaff, Arizona, it's almost like the city, it's not a city, it's a small town, obviously, but it's kept immaculately clean. Like the grounds, the grasslands, it's almost like a golf course. We couldn't believe how clean they keep up this town. Because it's a tourist attraction, and we know that, the Lowell Observatory actually gets over 100,000 visitors per year. Okay, so they make sure that the grounds are all kept in perfect shape, and it's a very beautiful and scenic and pictorial city, town. It's very, very beautiful, and with all cut off lighting, no porch lights, not allowed. The lighting, there's absolutely no light pollution even at night. Even observing from the Mars Hill, where the teenagers all hang out at tailgate parties and all that kind of stuff, you can look down on the town, and it's still dark. Like you can see the odd lights and everything else, but it's all low cutoff lighting, and still very, very dark. And it's amazing what we can see even with the naked eye. Like I saw easily 5.3 magnitude in the Little Dipper. That was easily seen. Okay. So this is driving up Mars Hill. This is where we're met at Saturn's Gate. This is the reception and administrative building that everybody goes into to, inside here we have the gift shops, and they have presentations that take place in here as well. A lot of history, a lot of documents on the walls about the history of the establishment. This is a famous telescope that was used at the Lowell Observatory up until 1964. It was a 42-inch. It served the Lowell Observatory for many, many years. Apparently, I don't know the exact little details about this, but apparently it was sent out in the early 60s to get re-illuminized, and the mirror came back all in broken pieces. So that's as much as I know about that. So as a result of that, they just basically put the telescope out as a museum piece outside the grounds. One of the museums here that we went into, where they gave a lot of lectures, and this is a panoramic view of a lot of artifacts, including plates of the discovery of Pluto and other artifacts and discoveries and everything else that went on at the Lowell Observatory over the years. This was one of our hosts that were giving us lectures. She was a guide as well. That gave us a tour of the observatory. And apparently she was, I forget, but she was actually studying in University of Montreal to become an astrophysics. A lot of detail on the discovery of Pluto here with Clyde Tombaugh. When you go to the Lowell Observatory, you'll see many artifacts about him, including statues. And so the telescope, you can notice behind Lowell, Clyde Tombaugh there, you can see the rock face of the observatory, and you'll get to see that later. So the discovery of Pluto was done not through the Clark refractor, as a lot of people think. It was done through a 13-inch astrograph. Okay, that was constructed, paid for about $10,000 or so. Here's some facts about Pluto. This is the residence that Clyde Tombaugh lived in, right up here. Apparently was the room that he resided in during his stay at at the observatory while he worked there. These were his records, the logbooks that he maintained while observing plates and observations of looking for the ninth planet, and very interesting. And they got various statues of famous astronomers over the years leading up to the observatory where Pluto was discovered. Yeah, so these are some details, a little bit about the observatory. Can't read them; it's too a little bit clear. But once you get a copy of this presentation, you'll be able to zoom in and see them. So remember the rock face that I was mentioning about behind Clyde Tombaugh? This is it right here. Right, this is the observatory where this is the observatory and the telescope where Pluto was discovered. We got another copy here of this. So here's the telescope. It was recently refurbished as well, and it's fully functional, and they still use it today. This place was just jammed with people. Like I said, they got thousands of people coming here all the time. It was quite busy. And this was interesting too, as to how the naming of Pluto was done. And this young girl from England nominated the name for Pluto through a telegram. And it was forwarded to the Lowell Observatory. That was pretty cool. Here's Clyde Tombaugh with the 13-inch telescope. So one of the nights that we were there, we went there actually. We only had the telescope for one night, which we'll get to. But every day that we were there during our stay, we visited the Lowell Observatory to look at all of the star party that they had one night, and also the daytime observing of the sun through solar filters and such as well, and all of the presentations that they do on a day-to-day basis. So we took in all of those as well. Also, we had Percival Lowell's car, nicknamed Big Red. As a wealthy man, of course, he was able to afford such things. Interesting features about this car. It had 3 speeds, 6 cylinders, 55 horsepower or so. I went up to 60 miles an hour, 7 miles per gallon. It was eventually sold to a Californian in 1939, but it was recently restored to factory mint condition by a 5th owner eventually, and which was actually driven at many Rose Bowl parades, and it was eventually sold back to the Lowell family back in 1999, which now resides back at the Lowell Observatory, which you can now see there. So this was a special spectrograph that VM Slipher used to discover the first evidence that the universe was expanding in 1909. I know that most of you know that Hubble got a lot of credit for that credit. I don't know the whole story behind all of that, but at this point, Hubble was just a graduating student at the time when this was the first evidence through this equipment that through this spectrograph that the universe was expanding. So I guess Hubble, what he did was basically confirmed that it was all, because there was a lot of skeptical astronomers at the time that took this knowledge, this discovery with a grain of salt, but it eventually became known eventually through Hubble's work that that Stouffer's use of the spectrograph did indeed prove have the first evidence of the expansion of the universe. Here's some other close-ups of the instrument, and this was used on the Clark refractor. Another thing that the Clark refractor is known for is it spent 8 years together with telescope observers, photographers, and scientific illustrators on creating dozens of detailed moon maps for determining landing sites for the Apollo program. So the astronauts were actually all invited to participate in the trainings in order to determine possible landing sites for the Apollo program. So they all went there for training. Another interesting instrument that was used was probably one of the earliest mechanical calculating machines that was used at the Lowell Observatory from 1914 to the early 30s. And the term computer, I guess, at the time was not used at the time, but it was used for testing possible predictable orbits for possible trans-Neptunian planets. And this is what it kind of looked like. So it looked like a pretty sophisticated piece of mechanical hardware. It'd be interesting we never got a demonstration of it. It was behind glass sort of thing. So it would be kind of cool to see a demonstration of it, to multiply some numbers, for example, or just to see how it would work. Kind of curious about that. And also, this is, by the way, Percival Lowell's first telescope that he was given by his mother. A little 2.2¼ inch refractor, 30 inches long, magnifying up to 140 times. I actually have an instrument that actually looks like that here in my shop, but it's not an authentic, but it's just it's a replica basically thing. But it looks very, very similar to that. And of course, at the site, there's the actual mausoleum, Percival Lowell. So here's the observatory. So what's inside? Well, this is what you would see when you walk in there. A monolith telescope, 32 feet long, 24-inch f/16. It's built by the Clark brothers. It's an aerospace Achromat doublet, weighing 150. Just the actual lens itself weighs 150 pounds, and it's a crown and flint system. The telescope has a 1-ton counterweight system on a German equatorial mount. Just the tube alone weighs 1 ton, and the total weight of the whole instrument, including the pier, weighs 13 tons. And there's a 12-inch finder refractor telescope mounted on the left side of it. And Percival Lowell paid $20,000 for this in 1896. Can you believe that? And it was recently restored, just basically 3 years before this picture was taken. Back in 2015, they spent over $350,000 on restoring the instrument. Like I said, Percival was infatuated with Mars and looking for life on Mars, like anything that would reveal canals, that would prove that there's intelligent life or irrigation systems that were developed. So he had an infatuation with this. Another picture of the scope on the bottom end. Got a few pictures of us looking through it. So what we did, we had the advantage while we were there to take some photo ops like you see here. But what we did, we wanted to mimic the exact picture that Professor Lowell did, his famous picture of him standing or sitting in front, looking through a telescope. So we did our best to mimic the same posture and image that the famous Professor Lowell picture shows. So here we have Stargazer Steve looking through an instrument in the same posture, and myself as well, and of course Peter. That was kind of a fun thing that we did. We weren't allowed to use the wooden ladder, the original wooden ladder, although it was there because it was so old and dilapidated, and because of insurance reasons, they wouldn't allow anybody to use it. So we had to settle with that chairlift that you see there on the left there with Peter sitting on. And we managed to get close to what we wanted. Took a picture of the night sky just with the digital camera to give you an idea what this sky conditions look like here. So what did we observe? So we had a lot of objects to look at. First of all, we wanted to look at the moon since it was visible for a short time. We saw the Terminator. Looked at it on 361 power. It was stunning. However, at 460 power, it was the seeing kind of limited us due to cool down and everything else. But the seeing conditions weren't the greatest. But what we were surprised at, there were no color aberrations on the moon. We expected to see a lot of colors that you normally see through acromats, but we didn't see this because you have to realize that we're looking at very low power per inch of aperture. So the Clark refractor we can get away with murder on that by using mediocre power per inch wise. Less than 20 power per inch wouldn't show us any color whatsoever, which I found very, very exciting. Saturn apparently was too low in the sky for us to see, and too high above the ladder. So we were kind of restricted in some cases where they wouldn't allow the counterweights to go above the height of the pier due to safety reasons. So we had a limited field of view, I guess you would call it. So certain objects we were not able to look at. So same thing with M57, we didn't have an opportunity to look at that as well. M11 was dazzling. We did have a Botter Apple filter, which is similar to a neutral density filter, a minus violet filter, just to eliminate any slightest purple halo glow that we might see. Anyway, it looked quite different than looking through any other telescope, I can tell you that. We looked at other objects for making some statements there where I've always been a strong proponent of how refractors are able to reveal the true stellar indices of stars, which is why I make apples. So we were able to see like beautiful colors. And these weren't secondary colors produced by the lenses. These are actually true, beautiful colors by the stars themselves. Now, I didn't mention we did look at Saturn just for a brief time, however, but it wasn't high enough. But however, we did see that three-dimensional look, as you would expect, because what they did, they actually masked down the refractor to 19 inches, so to increase the focal ratio from f16 to above f20. And when you do that, you get more of a three-dimensional impact, and it looked pretty awesome. And of course, with the 3D effect you get also with together with the long focal ratio and everything else, you get a large depth of field and a large depth of focus as well. Now Mars, apparently with, as you know, with the dust storms happening at the time, we weren't able to see much at all, but it looked very large. And but we looked at it with different filters. We tried everything. We tried 3 different colored filters plus the minus violet filter. We even stopped down the aperture to 14 inches just to see if we could see anything, but apparently we weren't able to see anything extra. It was unfortunately a washout for us. There was a slight, Peter slightly hinted on a slight hint of a polarized cap, but Steve and I couldn't confirm that. M57, we were able to both see the central star peeking in and out using inverted vision. And this is the first time I've ever seen the central star through any telescope. But I was not convinced because it was like in and out. So it was like, it's like you can sometimes fool yourself thinking that you know it's there, and you can fool yourself to think that it's there. But I didn't feel totally convinced I saw it, but at least I think I did. So Epsilon Lyrae, so very close double. This is a test that we normally use for a lot of telescopes to check the separation and the resolution of our scopes. And this was definitely able to see that, no problem. It was a very clean, easily split double. Like even though the scope was cooling down, we were able to see a very, very wide separation between the stars. M13 was absolutely awesome. It filled the whole field of view, as you can imagine. We saw the propellers with curving star chains. The resolution to the core was the best that Peter's ever seen. And like I mentioned, like listen here, folks, it's like tell it like it is. This refractor turned the globular cluster into a open cluster. Like that's what it looked. It looked actually right through it. Okay, where you'll see like separating stars right in the core. Like it was just unbelievable. M92 was still bright, but seemed more distant and dim by comparison. My take on it was that it compared. It was dim, but it compared well to M13. But there was something about M92 that was unique that I can't seem to explain. But M33 is a similar object. The Clark didn't make this object stand out, but I think I'm not sure why. And I don't know why it did. I thought I knew why then, but I'm still not convinced. Looked at a few other objects here. We have problems with the scope hitting the pier that limited our objects. So anyway, so what was happening here was like we had all these objects thanks to Stargazer Steve, who basically got all these objects in order prior to the night that we would be all prepared to look through them. Some of them we couldn't look at because of the pier restrictions. However, we did come across one object that Steve had to come to our. He had to come. We only had one object, one or two objects left to look at. So we had to. So Steve went through his books, and we came across an object that we can see that would not limit the pure motions of the scope. And this was NGC 6905 in Phineas, a Jupiter-sized planetary object, bright fuzzball, and very, very with interesting features. It was quite a large feature, almost round in shape, detailed. Like it was just incredible looking at this thing at 177 power. This is where the Clark refractor showed its magnificence. Hats off to Steve for attempts at locating a potential object so late at night, close to our deadline, given the restrictions we had maneuvering the telescope. In my opinion, yeah, NGC 6905 wins the Lowell object through the Clark refractor. And my criteria for why this is so is outlined below. The visual experience was photographic compared to published images, and planetary nebula details is complementary to what we would see in planetary details. Like for such a large 24-inch aperture, one would expect an overexposed visual image for such an object, but not in this case. We saw minute detail in the nebula similar to published images shown here. And this is what you would, this is basically, this is the detail that we saw, however, not as bright as Peter mentioned when I was talking to him last night, but it was definitely, we saw this modeling effect in the features of this object. That was something else. We're proud of that. We tried Mars again later on in the night. We still had some, we had 10 minutes left until 2 o'clock. And Peter was able to detect a very slow slight band on Mars, but we stopped it down, even down to 13 inches. And you just couldn't really see too much more detail. So like I said, we tried all the different filters again, trying to mask it down further, and none of these attempts seem to do anything for us, unfortunately. So heading back from the observatory, this gives you a little bit of the landscape of the town, showing the low light-off cut-off lighting. And as we're approaching Phoenix Airport the next day, gives you an idea of how hot it was. During the day at 12 p.m. As at noon, it was 44 degrees Celsius. I can't tell you, the heat wave is just incredible there. But let I mention to you is that at Flagstaff, okay, I was talking to the operators there. Because of the high altitude, over 7,200 feet in altitude, you actually get snow winters comparable to Sudbury. In other words, they got 6-foot snowbanks in the wintertime, believe it or not, just like we do here. And you would never think that, but I just found that amazing. So anyway, we're here we are at the Phoenix Airport at 44 Celsius, and you have to realize that Peter told me in some instances that some planes, depending on the temperature, are not allowed to fly. They can't take liftoff. When the temperatures are way too high, the planes can't take off. And I didn't know that. I'm glad he told me this afterwards. I would have been pretty nervous boarding this plane at the time. And we've got some interesting aerial photos here from the plane. Heading back. And I want to thank you, Rudy, once again for allowing this special opportunity. This can never happen again, I'm sure. We're so thankful for you to do this for us. And again, I appreciate you for doing that for us. Thank you so much. I hope everyone enjoyed the presentation.